So in this video, we're going to talk about the significance of your NIH significance section. And it goes without saying that if your significance isn't seen as significant by your reviewer, then your proposal has no chance. So why do we pay so much attention to your significance section? Why is this important? Well, it's actually the second most important part of the proposal next to the specific aims page. And it's really true that great science is not enough. And I'm going to explain that in a moment. And I'm going to give you 5 guidelines for what goes into the significance section. So a lot of people give this too little attention. A well-known investigator may get away with a short, condensed significance section, but the rest of us do not. And there's a lot of conflicting advice and confusion about what should go into the significance section and how long it should be. So here we're going to sort it out. I'm going to give you guidelines of what to do and what not to do, and you'll know what to do and how long to make your significance section. So let's get just a bit of theory out of the way first. Building desire is the main job of your significance section. And you may say, what? Desire? Emotion? What are you talking about? This is about science. This is about research. It isn't about emotion. What's going on? And I'm here to tell you, yes, it is about emotion, actually. So your reviewer has to end up excited. They have to go into a study section meeting ready and excited to support your proposal. And if they're not willing to do that, then it has like zero chance. And they have to do this in front of a group of peers. So this requires this emotion of desire, of excitement, of enthusiasm toward your proposal. So if you don't create that desire, that excitement, then you are highly unlikely to get the funding that you want. And so let's talk about how to not do desire and a little bit about how to do it here. Showing how smart you are by spewing facts onto the page, that does not create desire. Showing yet more details of how you'll carry out the project, just sneaking those into the significance section because you think you don't have enough space in the approach for that, ain't going to do it. Doing a long, tedious review of the literature, that won't do it either. Instead, we really have to answer one core question. Why does this project deserve scarce funding over the others in the mix? Let's talk about that mix and talk about solving a problem that your reviewer cares about. So we scientists are in science because we like answers to interesting questions. Yes, we want to solve pressing problems, but we really want interesting scientific puzzles. We want to move forward and figure out the answers to the questions that we encounter in our research. So your puzzle, your question needs to be of current interest. And so you have to relate this in your significance section to what the community is thinking about and what they're talking about. So the context of review is most of everything about what takes place. I mean, your proposal is not reviewed in isolation. It's stacked in and compared to others being considered. Even if the funder tells you during review, tells the reviewer not to compare proposals, how as a human being can we not compare, how good this one is compared to how good this one is? We can't help but compare. Therefore, it's not just a matter of taking interest in your work, but of your reviewer actually taking more interest in your work than in the other proposals that are in the mix. So to make an example of this, let's use breakfast cereal and compare 2 scenarios related to, yes, breakfast cereal. So scenario 1 is the mountain cabin. So let's say, your spouse, your partner dragged you out to some remote mountain cabin that's far away from town, and you wake up in the morning after arriving late at night and there's nothing to eat except you found in one cabinet there are some Lupios that you could eat for breakfast to get started. You could either do that or you could drive to the store 1.5 hours away, which is a 3-hour round trip. So it's a pretty easy choice. You kind of either eat the Lupios or you don't, and maybe you decide to drive to the store, but for most of us, it would be like, yeah, I'll just eat the Lupios for now. And you may complain about it, but you're likely to eat them unless you really, really hate Lupios, okay? So let's compare that to scenario number 2. Let's say you have nothing to eat for breakfast, but you are 5 minutes away from cereal. can get to the grocery store quickly and easily, and you go into the cereal aisle and it has almost 100 different kinds of cereal available, all arrayed out. You aren't going to pick them all. You know, you're not going to take home 100 different boxes of cereal unless it's kind of a bizarre experiment, right? So you're probably going to pick one or maybe two for good measure. So you pick these based on a combination of habit, like maybe you're familiar with certain cereals, but if you're not familiar with any of the cereals there, then what's going on the box is really all that you have to do, all that you have to choose from. And that is why the people who create those boxes of cereal pay so much attention to how they look and what they have on the box. So why cereals and proposals aren't that different? Well, reviewers can only pick one or two of these proposals to advocate for, and especially if they don't already know you and your work in sort of intimate detail, then all they can look at is your so-called cereal box, which is your grant proposal. It's like just a fancy kind of wrapper for the actual research you want to do. So there's this balance between newness and familiarity. If they're familiar with your work, you have an advantage inbuilt. There's just no way around that. And if they're not familiar with your work, then you have to do even more heavy lifting to get them familiar with your work. And the thing that you have to do in either case is give them a strong why to pick your proposal over the other proposals in that mix. Over all of the other ones that are arrayed out, they have to be able to hone in on yours and pick it out and go in and advocate for it. Is yours the one? Well, the significance section has a lot to do with that. And some people think that great science is enough, but it is not. There's often a lot of great science in the mix. Now, maybe back in the day, the scientific quality wasn't as good in the mix, and you could get away with, just having great science and not having a great sort of wrapper around the science, a great cereal box, so to speak, which is your proposal. Okay, so the reviewer has lots of great choices, a difficult choice often, not always, but most of the time. And so good or even great is not enough in the days of 10% pay lines. You've got to be that 1 in 10 that stands out, that's going to be the one that ultimately gets picked by that study section after your reviewer picks it and goes in and advocates for it and gets the other reviewers on board. Like, if you really think about that process, if you've been part of study section, then you get it. But if you haven't, if you think about that process, it's like, wow, that reviewer not only has to convince themselves, I not only have to convince them, but I have to convince them to go fight for this in front of their peers. That's a big bar. So you have to relate to the reviewer and their pre-existing desires. This is so key. What things do they already want solved? What problems are they thinking about? And you have to come in with a solution, with a way of at least moving forward on solving those problems. So improving your significance section may actually improve your science. And this is the cool thing about doing a great job of your grant writing. Some people think it's about just putting the great, fluffy writing on top of the science, but no, often as I work with clients through their grant proposals, we improve their science itself. There's a feedback loop, because when we are working on constructing a great significance section and other parts of the proposal, we'll see problems with the construction of the science and then improve the science itself, which then improves the writing, and so on and so forth in an iterative loop. So here's some stuff to do and not to do that I'll share with you. First, some don't do's. Don't assume that your reviewer already understands what the problem, question, or challenge is in your proposal. So like a one-liner is not enough. It's never enough. Don't assume that they have some magical built-in knowledge about what's going on in your work. They don't, even though we often sometimes think that they do. I don't know why we assume that they're magical human beings and we aren't, or whatever the assumption is, but it doesn't work. Don't write a long, boring literature review in your significance section. Don't do it. Don't be too brief in explaining the nature of the problem. And it seems like those two bullet points are the opposite of one of another, but they're not. And let me explain that with subsequent do and don't. So don't spew too many facts. That's the last part of some don'ts. Okay. So some guidelines for what you want to do. Make it the right length. This is the first thing. There's a lot of advice out there that errs on the side of keep it short, and there's even advice I've heard of that says half a page for your significance section is plenty. And I say, no, not enough. Not enough to do the heavy lifting of convincing the reviewer, especially if they're not familiar with your work, about the importance of the science that you're talking about. If you're going into a specialist audience who's reviewing your proposal and they're familiar with you and your work, then maybe it's 1 to 2 pages to do that heavy lifting. And that's still just 1/12 to 1/6 of the space that's available in your proposal if we're talking about a 12-page NIH proposal. Now, if it's a more general audience or an audience that's not familiar with you and your work, you have even more heavy lifting to do. You have to tell more of a story. And in that case, I recommend 2 to 4 pages. Yes, 2 to 4 pages, and that's not just based on guesswork, that's based on actually seeing successful proposals. What happens in successful proposals? So yes, 2 to 4 pages. Right. Okay, so the next thing is solve a problem that your field cares about. I already mentioned this, but it's so important, I have to mention it again. Great proposals are always based in solving a problem that peers in your field care about. Your significance must clearly delineate that problem. Even if you think the field already knows what the problem is, already understands it, like I said earlier, they don't have magical powers of insight into what you're thinking. You have to explain what you're thinking. And you also then have to show not only what the problem is, but why your work is the best solution to the problem. Now, this next one, tell a compelling story. This answers a thing that I mentioned earlier about this trade-off between not having it be a long, boring literature review, but having enough there that conveys why this is important. And that is done by telling a story. It's not a lit review, it's a story. It should be a condensed story of your project. Now, a lot of people have a whole novel in their minds about their research. You've been working on your research for years and you want to put it all in, and all of your ideas and all of the possibilities into your grant proposal, but you've only got 12 pages, or in some cases 6 pages, or maybe for NSF 15 pages, but you haven't got that much space. So you have to translate it into a condensed movie or even TV version of this particular story. And the thing that is so important in a good story is have the contrast between key villains and key heroes, and you do that in vignettes. You do it by layering problems and solutions, and I'll talk about that in other videos. So the next thing you need to do is educate your reader with keen insight and great questions. So by clarifying the nature of the problem your field faces, you convey your deeper understanding. This conveys your authority, gives trust in you far more than just spewing facts does. So the best way to educate your reader is not to show how much you know, again by spewing facts, is to ask great questions and provide great insights. So don't be stingy with your great ideas. Don't think I have to hold back because I've got this secret great idea, and if I share it with this study section, then it might get out there. Yes, it might get out there, but if you want funding, not sharing your best idea is going to reduce your chances. So you have to share your great ideas with your reviewers. All right. The next thing is to show why your team is poised and ready to go. Specifically, why you, why now, why here. Don't just make this a generic project anyone could do at any point in history. No, it has to be why here, why now, why you. I mean, can you imagine a story like The Lord of the Rings as just a generic story? I mean, that would be boring and nobody would have ever heard of it. It's about the specific characters, the specific villains, the specific heroes that makes a story like that great. And that needs to be the core of your story. So nobody funds generic projects for generic teams. They fund specific projects with a specific well-suited team who's ready to solve that problem. So there's more, but in the interest of keeping it concise, I'm going to refer you to 2 possible places. If you're ready to get deeper help, you can join us in the Grant Foundry for small group, personalized, intensive grant writing course. In my opinion, the best on the planet. I've been developing this for over 10 years, iterating, making it better and better, and we have a stellar team of coaches. So if you're into that, you can go over to grantfoundry.com/GF70. And we make grant writing easy, fun, and fulfilling. grantfoundry.com/GF70 to learn more. If you instead prefer more free in-depth training, then go over to grantwebinar.com and see what we've got as our latest offering of free trainings. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe and like the video to get access to more videos on having more fulfilling research careers and doing more effective grant writing. Because if you're more effective at your grant writing, it's going to make your research career much more fulfilling and fun and easy. So with that said, thank you. I'll see you soon.